live, and we do have a quorum. So our first motion is to go into closed session. Jeanette?
Moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Councillor Fowler. Resolved that council resolve itself into committee of the whole closed session as authorized under section 239 of the Municipal Act to consider adoption of closed minutes of meeting held June 21st, 2023, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose as it relates to the appeal of conditions of draft approval to the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. is, there's no addendums.
We're going to report it first. We're here.
Okay, we're going to resolve that council rise from committee. We did that, didn't we? No. Okay. Jeanette.
Moved by Councillor Leonard and seconded by Councillor Gowdy, resolved that council rise from committee of the whole closed session, that procedural bylaw 2022-0026 be waived, and that the deputy warden report.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
And there is a motion coming out of this, moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears, that the warden and CAO be authorized to execute the minutes of settlement of Ontario Land Tribunal case number OLT-22-002244.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. All right, now there's no addendums today. Is there any disclosure, pecuniary interest, or general nature thereof of any item on today's agenda by any member of council? Nikki?
Yes, on communications, I have a pecuniary interest as the one report is from my place of employment.
Okay, we've got the paperwork. All right, adoption of the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Leonard, resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 21st, 2023 be adopted.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. There are no delegations or presentations today. So we have a proclamation, Open Farms Day.
So through you, Deputy Warden, I'll just read the resolve clause. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the County of Frontenac hereby declares September 1 to October 15th, 2023 as Open Farm Days in Frontenac County, and reminds individuals of the importance of this 6-week celebration, which supports local agriculture and food businesses in our communities, and further that the county encourages all residents to support local farms and food businesses by participating in this series of events. Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Lichty, that council adjourn and meet as the committee of the whole with the deputy warden in the chair.
All those.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. As usual, I'll highlight various items on certain slides, but available to answer questions, or staff can get back to you if there are further questions. So CAO schedule, and I think most of these things are fairly straightforward, and we'll touch on a couple of them, such as the Warden's Caucus and the admin office as we go through. Next slide, please. The EOWC met last Thursday and Friday in Cobourg. Primarily on the agenda was the 7-and-7 housing project and business case. In particular for Frontenac, the business case, which was produced by KWM Consulting, who are housing experts, dealt with recommendations around communal servicing and supporting our position on communal servicing, and also highlighted the project in Verona that South Frontenac is working on as a excellent example of rural development. The business case will help us moving forward on advocating for funding. South Frontenac is in the EA process. The project in Central Frontenac, I understand that the Director of Planning and our Manager of Planning will be working with the township on some more public consultation, and then they'll be ready for the EA process as well. So this document will help us. It will also mean that we can piggyback on funding that the Warden's Caucus may apply for, and you'll note that there are some funding opportunities in the presentation. We aren't quite at the point of asking for money because of the EA process, but certainly leading the pack in much of Eastern Ontario in terms of getting ready for that. Eorn has been hired as the project manager for that and will be reporting monthly to the Warden's Caucus. Also of interest, Prince Edward County, and this has been a longstanding issue for municipalities that operate long-term care facilities. And it applies to our annual repayment limit, which is shortened to ARL, which means that any debt taken on with respect to a long-term care facility is applied to your annual repayment limit. Prince Edward County went to the Land Tribunal and received a decision that it could be exempt because it is fully guaranteed by the province of Ontario, except for the interest component. So our lobbying position at AMO from the Warden's Caucus and Meredith, our executive director, and Kurt Graves from Lanark County met with ministry staff last week, are making the point that if the Land Tribunal is going to make this decision, municipalities shouldn't be required to wait several months for that decision. The legislation or the regulation should be changed so that it is just automatically exempt. For us, what that means is the Fairmount project, and as the treasurer has advised, if we did do a new build, it would either completely assume all of our debt capacity or exceed our debt capacity. And that would make it very difficult. So this is a really important decision throughout Eastern Ontario and throughout long-term care. And as well, Advantage Ontario is going to be making the same kind of argument. AMO Communications, and as usual, I won't go through those in great detail, but the Housing Accelerator Fund, there's a virtual information webinar. Last one was yesterday, but again, we're not quite ready for that funding, but Eorn on our behalf throughout Eastern Ontario will be tracking that. If there are housing projects in your municipality that are ready to go, that would be a good example. AMO is in London from August 20th to 23rd. There are several EOWC delegations, primarily centered around the 7 and 7 housing project, continued advocacy for long-term care, including the issue that I just mentioned, and of course the paramedic issue. And we reviewed those recommendations with you at the last council meeting. And we'll move on to the next slide, just to talk about our quarterly report for the Howe Island Ferry. And as usual, Mr. Dillabaugh is here if there are any questions that come as a result of this. The number of small vehicles and large vehicles are down from 2022, and we'll get into some of the reasons in a moment. Next slide, please. Unscheduled shutdowns through that quarter. There was one, and there were 19 days that the township was away for dry dock. So that sends more vehicles to the county ferry, obviously. And there was a large agricultural drainage project that Richmond Ditching was completing on the island. And of course, those construction vehicles take up a lot of room. Next, please. So the following reflects the numbers of voyages, April, May, and June. June and September are typically the busiest months of the year, school winding down, agricultural activity up. So those are typically the busiest months, but you can see the steady increase from April, May through to June. Basically, June was exactly the same as June of 2020, but down 34 trips from the previous year. So there were a number of reasons that the number of vehicles were left behind has increased. The Howe Island Township Ferry was away for 12 days in April and created extra traffic. The Frontenac Howe Islander left behind 674 vehicles during this time out of 746 vehicles for the month of April. And the Howe Island Township Ferry was away for 7 days in May, creating extra traffic again, and the heavy equipment. And finally, Frontenac Islands Township made the decision to reduce ferry hours for the township ferry. Next slide, please. So we're just going to, the administrative office project, and Brianna will just pop up a quick video to walk you through it. We had our meeting yesterday, so this video is about a week old, and since then a lot of progress has been made. But we'll walk you through some of the key elements of it and give you a sense of what the building is going to look like. So this is the new addition where the council chambers and the paramedic suite will be, where we had. This is the new front foyer. New office, just as you're coming into the old house, another new office. I believe that's the clerk's office there with a fine view of the septic field. Which used to be my view. Now I look at a parking lot. So this is the major change that we talked about a few months back. This is the new collaboration space since the Southern Addition has been eliminated. Actually, behind the camera is, the fridge and stove and microwave. This will be a small patio, and you can see the that's down to the level of the paramedic suite. Going through this hall, at the end of that hall will lead into the new council chambers and the new Bud Clayton room, which we'll use as a committee room for closed sessions. Small kitchenette and 2 accessible washrooms in that area, as well as direct access to the outside so that it can be used for evening meetings without opening up the entire building. This is walking back out that hallway. On the right is the HR department, direct access from the hallway to the occupational health nurse so that they don't have to go through interior areas to talk to the occ health nurse. Soundproofing between all of the offices is standard. Fireplaces remained. Not operational. There's Brent, our project manager, who we love teasing. Well, in particular, I like teasing. And that's our fine videographer, Matt, talking there. This is going upstairs to the 2nd floor. The stairwell remains largely unchanged, but does get a fresh coat of paint. This there is actually the financial office storage area. We're now in Matt's new office. He gets a fine view of the roof. If he strains his neck, he can see the parking lot too. Where this fireplace is on the upper floor is actually going to be a little meeting room, glassed-in meeting room, which will service the upper floor. That would be Kevin's office there and Alex's office slightly off to the left. There will be windows there. If we do the 3rd floor, it would come through essentially what is Kevin's office there. And the architects have promised us a full report in September. We're now into the planning and economic development office. That's Joe's office there. It's a nice wall, though. And he too can look out at the septic field, which is also my golf course, but that's another story. I knew now our recreation. So this is the catwalk above the new reception area. So even since this was taken, a lot more of the drywall is on. So where you see the steel studs is now mostly drywall. That is the new stairway down to the first floor from the second floor, and this is into the finance office. So this is where payroll, accounts payable, and accounts receivable will be. This is the payroll office. Again, the fireplace where the little meeting room is going to be. This is Brianna's office. Probably going to be the hottest place in the building because she's also got the HVAC behind one wall. So we are in the reception area, and all of the concrete has now been poured. The new lintel will be in place above the reception desk that we'll be sharing with the Conservation Authority. This is into the stairwell leading down to the Conservation Authority and the shared meeting rooms. And this all gets a paint and refresh too as they go out the door. Through that big double door is into Fairmount. So that's outside the construction. There'll be a new door at this location. So there are 3 shared meeting rooms. This is the former lunchroom, which will seat about 8 to 10. There's a smaller one across the way that'll probably be 6 to 8. And then the largest meeting room is on the other side, which will do about 12 to 14. On the left is Katrina Ferlinetto's office. And you get a sense of the finishes here. The painting is all done except for the final coat, which again they do as they leave the building. That is their new storage area for their secure files. The washrooms on that floor also get a paint and a refresh, but you can see this is the area that their photocopier is. Open meeting space. Some internal meeting space, and you can see the glazing there. Yesterday, we actually tested out the soundproofing of the glazing, and it's pretty amazing. Several of us were in the meeting room, and there were probably 6 or 8 on the other side having a conversation, and it was quite soundproof. So the flooring is all down. That's just a protective covering on it. And as I said, all but the final coat of paint needs to be applied. So big thank you to Matt for putting that together for us. Hope that gives you a good sense of where we're at. And on the next slide, we began with that aerial view, and on the right, you can see the excavation area, which is essentially out from the main floor of the paramedic suite, and above that, the council chambers. And you can see the traffic circle in front of the of Fairmount, and where those cars are immediately behind the addition that's expanded short-term parking in that area as well. Next slide, please. Same time, we've got final approval from the city of Kingston on our site plan. In fact, that just came through this morning. Wemp & Smith, our contractor, have been on site for a couple of weeks doing site prep. They have the road base down. Much of the rock that has been excavated for the base of the paramedic station is being used for road base. So we're minimizing cut and fill. There is one corner that we'll have to bring some fill in, but it's been fortuitous that we've been able to use much of that excavation for that. On the right side, you see where they're doing the excavation for the slab on grade for the paramedic station. There is one small section on the far right of that, which is actually just outside of the view, where the bedrock does fall off. And there will be a small extra for that to do some engineered fill in that area. But we're pretty lucky that the geotechnical was almost bang on. The well was drilled last week, and we got well over the 5 gallons per minute required for occupancy. And that documentation was submitted to the city yesterday. So making good progress. So every Tuesday morning, we have a site meeting with the contractors. Yesterday was the admin office. Next Tuesday will be with the contractors at this site. So making good progress, and we hope to be in both facilities year end or early in 2024. Next slide, please. So just a little update on our public consultation and work that we completed at the last council meeting. Over 700 responses collected. Large demographic of people over the age of 55. But we did manage, and big thank you to Jason and Zhao, who made determined efforts to also try and get some youth people interested in responding. But I think it's fair to say that 700 responses to a survey is a mammoth effort, and a big thank you to council for promoting that on your township websites, and to Jason and Zhao and our team at this end, Jason and Kevin and Matt, that helped out with a lot of that information. We also did strategic planning consultations, as you know, one-on-one interviews at the staff and political level. And that was presented at the June meeting, and the final report and submission as amended by council at the last meeting is on this agenda. Next slide, please. Barb has provided us with a update on human resources issues. Again, still strong on the recruitment side, 263 postings. Bonnie, our occupational health nurse, is retiring the end of August. And Brianne Marshall, who is currently an ADOC at Fairmount, was a successful candidate for that. We really thank Bonnie for her years of service, her wonderful sense of humor, her occasional days bringing Arlo, the wonder horse / dog, into the office to drool on us and to beg for food. Bonnie's career, is one of those ones that, as a nurse, she's worked in a number of different locations, but she's been with us for about 12 or 13 years and has brought a level of professionalism that is required for occupational health, and we thank Bonnie for her service, and we really appreciate Brianne stepping up in the role, and I think Brianne will be a wonderful addition. And Peyton Hunt will be taking her job commencing April the 8th, so we'll have a little bit of overlap on both those jobs, and good opportunity for Peyton, and we look forward to working closely with Brianne on occupational health and safety. Next slide, please. So June 26th, Fairmount Home hosted its annual butterfly release to honor the lives of our residents who have passed away during the year. And it's always a moving and emotional event. And, the staff, especially Katie Johnson at Fairmount, who organizes it every year, does a wonderful job. And the residents really appreciate the effort that goes into that. And certainly the families do as well. So thank you to everybody that was involved in that. Next slide, please. And the Residents Council plan to do dwarf lilac trees to honor the residents and staff for standing strong during the pandemic. And we really appreciate, the Residents Council for all of their input, not just on this, but, they're there through thick and thin to provide us with advice and wise counsel on what's best for the residents. And, as we all know, everything that Fairmount does, from the gentle care philosophy to every aspect of the home, begins with a resident focus, and the families that contribute to that, and the members that or the residents that sit on the Residents Council are a big part of that. Next slide, please. So the most engaged with social media site or post had to do with the picture showing the Wolf Islander 3 and 4 together. And, I think it really gives an amazing sense of scale as to, the size of the new vessel compared to the old vessel. And thanks to Matt I assume that was a Matt picture? Yes. For capturing that, but I think it gives you a good sense of exactly the size of the new vessel. Next one, please. Also had significant engagement on the new paramedic base, and you can see again the aerial photography. You can see where the truck is at the back. That is the loop into the back of the paramedic station. So they come in through the back, drive out the front, and the roadway aligns with the road down to Fairmount. Also, the paramedic rides for Pride, June 28th, and the Fairmount Home Butterfly release. And upcoming, as always, the recruitment campaign, paramedic ride along Wolf Island Ferry Project, comms committee that Matt sits on, the Neighbor Saving Neighbors program. And I just wanted to highlight, the great uptick that we've had in volunteers for the Neighbor Saving Neighbors program, and thank all of the community residents that will help make sure that a defibrillator is on site when needed. And it is a wonderful partnership with Queen's University, and also the OHT comms committee that Matt has sat on, and has been a great help in terms of connecting the OHT to a number of his community channels. Next slide, please. The provincial policy statements and natural heritage policies were released on June the 16th, and the draft PPS closes or for comments on August the 4th. And we will be working through that as well. But it is a significant change for how we do business and how natural heritage is treated within the province of Ontario. As a complement to that, Joe and Sonia and planning staff of the township have completed a natural heritage consultant RFP, and they're working through the 9 responses that were received, and will be making a recommendation. So although conservation authorities are no longer allowed to comment on natural heritage issues, the county and the township still must consider the natural heritage policies. Application numbers for June and July continue to be high for Central Frontenac. That seems to be where the action is, but still remains strong in both North and Frontenac Islands. And finally, Open Farms, our annual event, which has grown immensely over the last 4 or 5 years and survived through the pandemic. September 1st to October 15th. New website launch on August the 2nd and a marketing campaign to support the various events, workshops, markets, and other experiences. And I know Richard and Debbie have been working hard on this along with our partners with the city of Kingston and South Frontenac, and of course, the farming community. So with that, if there are any follow-up questions or anything further, I'd be pleased to.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Judy?
Yes, I appreciate that Matt has been sitting on the communications committee for the Wolf Island Ferry project, but I haven't seen any reports come back to the council here or anyplace else. And my second question is, I'm not aware of a township employee that's sitting on that communications, and that unless the CAO, our new CAO, may have been invited to it.
Darlene used to sit on the committee,
to.
but I don't know that,
Okay.
but I can turn to Matt if. You just want to review any activity with the communications, communications team?
Yes. The activities of the committee are fairly routine. There's a communications group hired by MTO to oversee communications and execute communications for the ferry projects. I think there's room to add members to that committee if it's something that would be useful.
Okay. So your CAO, if that person wants to join, just let Matt know, I guess.
But it'd be MTO that would extend the invitation, so it'd
Oh,
be
I see. Okay.
MTO meets with their staff on a regular basis, and they can put it on the agenda for discussion with MTO.
Okay.
Okay,
makes
going
sense.
back to the concept of a report back to council, since we have representation on it, I haven't seen a report back at any point in time. Do you have anything to report to us?
I can put something together for you again. It's very, very routine. So the substance of the conversation typically is something along the lines of there will be delays at the city side over the long weekend. Please share that with your audiences. But I can prepare something if you'd like.
Okay, so it'd be fair to characterize it as a top-down type of committee, that it comes flowing from MTO rather than questions going up to it.
Oh, yes.
It also sounds like it's timely communication, things that are happening right away.
That's
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Kelly? Judy?
One more question. Any insight when the boat's going to actually run?
We asked them that question just yesterday morning, and I'm afraid to say
Okay. All right. Oh, Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. So 2 questions if I can. First of all, as the CEO may be aware, there was a staffing shortage for the Howe Island Ferry on the weekend, which resulted in closures for lunch and break over the summer period, which has not happened in the past. I wonder if we had an update on staffing. And the other question, regarding the new build, do we have an update on cost and occupancy? Thank you.
There's a report further on the agenda on cost. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we're hoping the end of December, early January, to have the building handed over to us. After that, there's things like furniture setup that needs to be done. So hopefully we can be fully operational and having a council meeting in there early in 2024. Perhaps the February meeting, I think, would be our best guess at this point. And with the paramedic station, same thing. They're anticipating sometime before the end of the year to be handing the building over, but then there will be fit up and probably a ribbon cutting on the coldest possible day in February.
Of course.
With respect to staffing on the island, we do have 2 full-time staff off on long-term disability and 2 of that takes up 2 of our part-timers, so that depletes the part-timer pool. And throughout the pandemic, St. Lawrence College had not been offering the necessary programs. So it is largely, we're relying on individuals currently working on other ferries, whether that's Glenora, the Wolf Island, and of course, they have their staffing issues as well. We have been perpetually recruiting, and we do have a part-timer starting on July the 21st, which is coming up. They have 6 mandatory orientation days before they can be left on the boat. We do anticipate that we'll be able to staff this weekend, Rob? Or next week?
It's gonna be tight, we're working on that with guys. It's part-time staff. So the part-time staff cannot count as a like on their own. They have to be, while they're in training, they have to have basically 3 on in the weekend. So because they cannot perform wheelhouse or deck duties on their own while they're in training. So it will definitely, by the look of it, we'll know better as of Thursday when I post it out, see if the casuals are able to step forward. If not, we will be covering the weekends next weekend.
And that is just for the rest of council, that's a 15-minute break in the morning, 15-minute break in the afternoon, and a half-hour break for lunch. So it's an hour Saturday and Sunday that the ferry would be shut down for breaks to meet the Employment Standards Act requirements.
Right. Okay, any other questions or comments for Kelly? Thank you, Kelly. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. There's no unfinished business. There's no consent reports from the Chief Administrative Officer. And we are at Committee of Management of Fairmont Home. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Gowdy, that Committee of the Whole Council adjourn and meet as Committee of Management of Fairmont Home with the Deputy Warden in the chair.
All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we have the CARF accreditation for information and the quality update activity report. Any questions or comments on those? Okay, we have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Leonard, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that Committee of Management of Fairmont Home adjourn and revert back to Committee of the Whole Council.
All those in favor? Carried. Okay, reports from the Chief Administrative Officer, staffing briefing by Dimitri. Summary of proposed changes to the natural heritage policies of the provincial policy statement. Good morning, Dimitri.
Good morning, Deputy Warden. Thanks for having me. Just a quick little overview of some of the changes. So if you recall, back on May 17th, staff had brought forward a report regarding changes to the provincial policy statement, or which is now known as the provincial planning statement. So when that statement was released, there were no natural heritage policies or definitions associated with those policies. And at that time, staff said that once the natural heritage policies were available, we would bring them back to you for information. So on June 16th, the province revised the proposed provincial planning statement, and they had extended the commenting period for the PPS ERO, or the Environmental Review of Ontario office, posting to August 4th to give municipalities an opportunity to provide a response or some comments on the natural heritage policies. So that was the purpose of the report, and that's why I am in front of you today. In general, there were no major natural heritage policy changes, which is quite surprising, quite frankly. There were also not too many changes to the actual definitions of the definitions that are associated with the natural heritage policies. I do want to highlight a couple of items, however. So In the definition of natural heritage features and areas, the reference to habitat of endangered and threatened species has been removed. Now it is separately defined from a natural heritage feature and area. And what this does is, on the surface, it looks a little bit scary, but in reality, endangered and threatened species are protected through the Endangered Species Act. And there are sometimes overlaying definition conflicts between natural heritage features and areas and threatened species. So sometimes you could have a chimney swift, for example, that takes that nests inside of an abandoned dwelling, inside of a chimney, and then under the existing definitions of the PPS, that would be considered a natural heritage area or a feature, which in fact is just a building that's been abandoned. So threatened species are not going to be losing their protection because they are protected under a different statute. All this definition changes is just providing a little bit more clarity. There's also changes to the definition of wetlands. There's been additional language that's been added to clarify that lands that are soaked periodically or that are being used for agricultural purposes, which no longer exhibit wetland characteristics, are not wetlands. Again, this is providing clarity. Typically, when planners look at wetlands or biologists look at wetlands, what they do to define them is they look at the types of species and animals that are present within that area to see if it meets the definition of a wetland. Most of the time, lands that are periodically soaked or are used for agricultural purposes typically get screened out of the wetland definition anyway. The last change was respect to the definition of significant. So under the definition of significant, the reference to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has been removed in the context of evaluation criteria and procedures for identifying provincially significant wetlands and areas of natural and scientific interest. The definition now more broadly refers to evaluation criteria and procedures without identifying a specific ministry. So although this change is minor, it does it is something that we should keep a close eye on, because what it does is it signifies that evaluation criteria and procedures for evaluating certain natural heritage features may come from different ministries or parts of the government that are not the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which is a ministry that's traditionally been developed in creating these policies and these procedures. So at this point, it's difficult to speculate what this change is going to result in or any future impacts, but it is something that we are going to keep a close eye on. And if anything comes up that is of concern, we will report back to council and local councils as well. The last portion of the report that staff had prepared asks the county to provide a response to the changes to the natural heritage policies. Essentially, what the response is saying is that Frontenac County is fortunate to have a lot of natural heritage features and unique beauty associated with the lakes, rivers, and wetlands in our area, and that the county is pleased to see that the natural heritage policies remain unchanged from PPS 2020. We're also highlighting that we have noticed that the definition for significant has removed the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and we urge the province to ensure that all changes to evaluation criteria and procedure continue to be based on best practices, modern science, and subject to public consultation. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Hey, questions or comments? Judy?
I agree. The removal of significant is worrisome, considering we're part of a UNESCO area. We have a bioarch, and I think on Frontenac Islands, and that in particular, the canal area that technically is farmland historically owned by farmers on both sides, but it's wetlands in the middle. And I don't know how something like that would get assessed now.
So through the deputy, they are still going to be assessed. There's no removal of criteria, and there's no removal of the policies that are associated with these natural heritage features or anything that is currently protected by the current policy framework. What the definition change is signaling is that these policies and procedure could be changed or originate from a different ministry other than the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. So could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I don't want to speculate at this point to say that it is something that is very concerning.
A little speculation that I might have is it could end up going from one ministry to another and taking a long time to get an answer. Environment could say it's natural resources could say it's environment. So until we start to work with it for a while to determine where it falls, we can have some waiting time. Any other questions or comments for Dimitri? Brett, go ahead.
This, as far as the planning goes in your department, if the development's on the water, how is that going to affect us differently than as we were before with the conservation authorities?
So through the
Will it be
deputy,
a little easier?
I wouldn't say it would be easier. I don't think there's going to be any major changes that this policy is going to result in. This policy change is going to result in, but in general, the protection of natural heritage has been made a little bit more complex with the conservation authorities being removed from that mandate. So these policies, specifically these changes, are not going to have I think down the road implications as far as implementation of the policies. Is just on the administrative side, we're going to have to get a little bit more creative as to how we do that. And one of the ways that we're looking at doing that right now is having a natural heritage consultant work with county and township planning staff to review applications on the waterfront, as well as applications in areas that are of significant natural heritage.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears. Be it resolved that council receive for information the administrative report entitled Summary of Proposed Changes to the Natural Heritage Policies of the Provincial Policy Statement / Provincial Planning Statement, and that council direct the clerk to submit comments about the proposed changes as outlined in Appendix A of this report to the province through the Environmental Registry of Ontario.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Dimitri. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again and again. All right, corporate services. We have a loan application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation. And we
Ms.
have Alex here if there's questions.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Leonard. Be it resolved that the corporate services new loan application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation report be received, and further that council of the County of Frontenac pass a bylaw later in the meeting authorizing the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation for the long-term financing of certain capital works of the Corporation of the County of Frontenac, and to authorize the entering into of a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to OILC.
Sorry.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Lichty. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac receive the report Planning and Economic Development New Capital Purchase of a Fleet Vehicle, and further that the Council of the County of Frontenac approve the purchase of a new fleet vehicle for planning and economic development, and further that council authorize the use of the capital replacement reserve in 2023 to offset the cost of the vehicle.
Any questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Appointment of Integrity Commissioner for the county.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Be it resolved that Cunningham, Swan, Cardy, Little, and Bonham LLP led by Tony Fleming, be appointed as the Integrity Commissioner for the County of Frontenac. And further, that the clerk be directed to bring forward later in the meeting the necessary appointment bylaw for council's consideration. And further, that the warden and clerk be authorized to execute an agreement with Cunningham, Swan, Cardy, Little, and Bonham LLP for the provision of services of an integrity commissioner, and further that a copy of this resolution be circulated to all member municipalities in Frontenac County.
Yes, I was wondering, because they are lawyers that are typically used by county as well as for our township and maybe others, and that was this proposal run past the newly created Office of the Integrity Commissioners to see if there's any conflict of interest in it? Because this firm would have been around when we were first appointing it in previous councils. And it seems like might be potential of a conflict, and I just want to make sure that it's not.
I'm sure the lawyers have thought about that. Kelly, would you like to respond?
It was not run by the office, but the question was posed at the meeting because several of the applicants have the same type of conflict. And the answer is that where there is a conflict with a legal decision, that they will work with the clerk and CAO and the municipality to designate another integrity commissioner. So for example, we had a contentious subdivision that had both planning and an integrity commissioner complaint, and they would hive those two parts off. It's not uncommon throughout Ontario for this type of situation. In fact, this law firm is the lawyer of record for many of its existing clients and has been working through that for the last 5 or 6 years since the legislation's been in place. But perhaps a clerk who is sitting in on the minute could add something to that.
No, there's nothing further to add, and the submission that was provided by the law firm did indicate how they would respond to any conflicts of interest. But as Mr. Pender indicated, if it came to that, they would seek another integrity commissioner.
Follow up, Judy?
Just since there is that newly formed office, would it be too late to get an opinion on them to make sure that we're doing the best practice?
I think it was felt it wasn't needed since there is a process that they followed in the past. Jerry? Is it at the pleasure of council usually?
My apologies, it is a 4-year contract for the term of council. For the term of council, yes, so that each council is appointing their own integrity commissioner.
Okay. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, next is the recognition of land acknowledgement for Frontenac County.
Moved by Councillor Lichty, seconded by Councillor Fowler. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac adopt the following land acknowledgement to be read at the beginning of meetings held by the County of Frontenac, including County Council and Advisory Committee meetings. And the acknowledgement is: we begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation.
Since this is a genesis from the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations, and that I found it surprising that there was no mention of murdered and missing Indigenous women being at the end of this. I think we're missing something from it. And while it's great for the land piece, and that the whole point of having the acknowledgement, and that I believe was one of the 95 recommendations from Truth and Reconciliation, it was an investigation on murdered and missing Indigenous women and children. I think it's missing.
So this is just one piece of those calls to action, which is the land acknowledgement. the issue that regarding the murdered and missing Indigenous women is another piece that could be looked at separately, but this itself is just acknowledging the land.
I have a comment from the warden that I'm going to read. In that he feels it needs to be a little shorter. And here's what he suggests. We begin this gathering place by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands, and as a county are committed to working with Indigenous people and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. And I'll read to you what we use at our council, which came from Chief Doreen Davis of the Algonquins. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. And what she explained to us is the nation includes all of the other people, Métis and otherwise, that are at the Algonquin table. So there's three different ones there. Bill.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. First of all, congratulations to the team that pulled all this research together. This is an amazing amount of work. I guess my question is, we currently have a land acknowledgement statement at the beginning of our meetings as well. Is the intent of this one, whether it be revised or not, to be used by all townships and the county, or are we all going to be using our own individual ones?
So this was discussed at the Frontenac Clerks Group, and we were all looking to bring this to council. I know that in South, they are waiting just a little bit to do some additional research, but this was the one that was looked at the Clerks Group. I can't speak to whether or not the other townships will pass this. I believe it may be coming to the North Frontenac Council meeting shortly, but I can't speak to the islands or South, or sorry, Central.
So just to follow if I could. So as I understand, the intent is not to replace any existing ones with this one as a county-wide sort of approach. It'll be up to each township to decide what they're doing.
That's correct. So this would be just the land acknowledgement for the county itself, and currently we do not have one.
One of the reasons that we work together is that if we can use something that is very similar or the same, we do. So maybe we could put all three together and see if there's any changes to make it a little shorter. Judy, you had your hand up.
Yes, it mentions that 2 members of the Indigenous community in the Frontenacs were consulted. Who?
So in Central, Chief Doreen Davis was consulted, and on the islands, I believe it was Terry Brennan, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the correct name? I think. So it's my understanding that Frontenac Islands may already have had one in place, that they had worked with Terry on to develop some other policies as well as the land acknowledgement. And so when we came up with this land acknowledgement, we looked at a number of different ones that are taking place within our area, especially because we are physically located in the city of Kingston. We looked at what they were doing as well as what's being done in the islands. And I believe Yvonne Robert, who was the CAO at the time, the acting CAO, had brought in something of what they were doing in Elizabethtown, Kittley previously. So we looked at all of those, and this was sort of the shrinked down combination of what we felt might be best. But again, it's council's prerogative whether we shorten that or change it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Do people feel that we can always start with what has been suggested and change it as we go along, or come up with something different at this point? But that would mean defeating this motion or deferring it to come back. Is it the feeling that we want it to be shorter than this or not? Or I don't know about longer, but I prefer not longer. And the advice we did get from the chief was to keep it short and succinct. Nikki.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. I agree. Let's give it your first suggestion. Let's give it a try, and we can always change it if we're not happy with it later.
Okay, Jerry?
I agree as well. I think this is long overdue. And we can start with this and we can always expand it, shorten it, whatever works. I think we need to acknowledge our heritage, and so I'm in favor of this one.
Yeah, okay. And as Jeanette is just saying, it can be amended. But I think what I'm hearing is a lot of work has gone into this, so let's go with this and see how it works, and we can amend it down the road if we want to. All right. Ray?
Well, I agree this is long overdue, but it would be nice if we could all come together and come up with one solution. And that it covers for all of the county of Frontenac. Instead of having the individual, this one, the individual, that one. And come together, because that's what we're supposed to be doing anyways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if we pass this one today, the other municipalities will see that this is what the county is using, and then we'll see if the other CAOs are going to bring this one to our local councils. I think that's kind of the plan. Yeah.
Yes, that was the plan. And we sort of left it generic in a sense that we did not specifically identify any First Nations, because, you know, it may be different where we are physically located in the city or where they're located in North Frontenac or on the islands. They could all be different. So this just pays general acknowledgement to all First Nations that were here before us.
Okay. Red?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote on the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. Next is all right, Frontenac County Strategic Plan. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Leonard and seconded by Councillor Gowdy. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac receive for information the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, Frontenac County Strategic Plan 2023-2026 report, and further that the clerk be authorized to bring forward a bylaw later in the meeting adopting the Frontenac County Strategic Plan 2023-2026 attached to this report as Appendix A.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. All right, information reports. Are there any questions on any of those reports or comments? All right, if not, we're reports on the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee.
Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Greenwood Spears, that the report received from the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee be received and adopted.
Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And Planning and Economic Development application for extension of draft plan. Pardon?
We passed those.
Oh, we've done those. Okay. All right. Let me turn the page. Right. So return to council.
Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Leonard, that council revert from committee of the whole council to council.
All those in favor? Carried. Adoption of the reports.
Moved by Councillor Gowdy, seconded by Councillor Saunders, that the report of the committee of the whole council be adopted and that the necessary actions or bylaws be enacted.
All those in favor? Carried. Is there any notices of motion? Any giving of notice of motion? Communications? Any other business to come before council today? Seeing none. Bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Lichty. Resolved that leave be given to the mover to introduce bylaws A through E that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaws A through E be read a first and second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Moved by Councillor Greenwood Spears, seconded by Councillor Lichty. Resolved that bylaws A through E be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
All those in favor? Carried. Great. Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Counselor Gowdy, seconded by Counselor Saunders, that the meeting hereby adjourn at 10:33 a.m.
All those in favor?